My God, that's so much better.
Yeah, of course. No
Yeah.
more room in the sound. Yeah, as us
Yeah,
audiophiles like to call it. It's room in the sound.
exactly. Do I sound okay? Do I
Yeah,
sound okay?
you sound great as usual.
I like that.
So
I'm
where's
gonna
that broadcast? The start broadcast button when I'm still
the
looking
other
for it.
thing that we could do if we want to
Yeah. Yeah.
is maybe what we'll do. I don't think we have to do it the whole time because I think it could be distracting. But do you
Yeah.
see this webcam?
Oh yes, I do. Yeah, this
Go.
yeah, we can do it in the
Uh,
beginning,
we
right?
can do it in the beginning. Like I'll just
So
really
there
quick.
I am. Yeah, yeah,
There you
perfect.
go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll do a just so that we can
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
people can get a visual of us, right?
Yeah, right. So key. It's so key. Wait, I need to make myself taller.
Oh man,
Um,
I'll make myself shorter.
so when I went to press recording the first time, it sort of looked like it was going to happen when I start broadcast, and now that start. Oh, I see. It's at the very top. Start broadcast. Okay.
Yep.
Attendees still on hold. Got it.
So it's 11 o'clock. Why don't we go ahead and do it? I don't want to keep people waiting. Awesome.
And we are recording, I
All
think.
right. Welcome, everyone. And this is Doug Foresta, along with my good friend and partner in crime, David Wolf. And, welcome to this webinar. I really appreciate you, whether you're listening live or whether you're listening to this afterwards. I definitely, we hope that you'll get something out of this. The purpose of this really is to talk about some of the things that we've been doing over the past, I would say, what, David? You and I have been working together probably a good 9 months, something like that.
Yeah, getting close to a year now.
So getting
Unbelievable.
close to a year. And so we're going to share with you, actually, David, if you want to go through those points, be my guest. You can go through the.
Sure. No, no, no. Thanks, Doug. Hey, hi to everybody. And okay, so one of the things we've observed by in the course of being podcast producers is that many of our podcast clients and partners ask, well, how do I build an audience? So today we're going to talk about some observations we've made about what's missing with the current standard podcast distribution model and some holes that we feel like are opportunities to fill. What we can do about it, right? So it's solution focused, and more specifically, we live as podcasters and as content creators in a world where we tend to create posts and then they kind of go off into the distance as time moves on. So we want to address that phenomenon of RSS and really address how we can grow our audiences by making some of our evergreen content rather more current for us. Right, Doug? Would you add anything there?
I will just really quickly add that I realized I intended to do this before we started, but my name is not, in fact, Kevin Coughlin, for those of you that know me. So I just want to say really quickly that, sorry about that. I am still Doug Foresta. I just needed
I
to
was a little concerned, actually. I was wondering. I took my
what
call.
happened? Where is he? Where is he?
Yeah, where is he? Yeah, he looks like him, but no.
Yeah, I mean, really, at the end of the day, what we're going to share with you is what David and I, grapple with, which I'm sure all of us do, is that we want to continue to grow our listenership. We want to continue to, kind of looking at what's next. Podcasting is not going away by any stretch of the imagination, and it is still the potential for podcasting is still enormous. So please know that when we share this with you, podcasting is still very much at the tip of the iceberg of the potential for growth. And
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not an instead of kind of scenario for us.
it's
These are
not an
not either
instead of kind
or.
of scenario, but one of the biggest questions we get asked is this question about how do I get more listeners? And David, I know you and I will talk a little bit about who the heck we are, how do we get
Yeah,
to be such good-looking individuals? Uh,
unbelievable. And with a resemblance, I might add. And we're not
that's
related,
right,
actually, but
exactly.
hey, Doug, I told him he looks more like my brother than my own brother. But we'll say I digress. So the good news is podcast is growing. 60 million Americans now listening on a monthly basis, according to Edison Research. And again, the challenge being, as fellow podcasters, how do we continue to grow our listener base in interesting, creative ways? And it's true that, unless you're really, really at the very, very, very top tier of the podcast world, or have a huge list, it's going to be challenging to grow. So we want to address that because, as the producers of content, I mean, we get asked. I mean, how do we close the loop? How do we generate more leads from the work we're doing? We're cranking
Right.
this out every week, etc. Right? Anything you'd add there?
Just to say, I just want another just quick housekeeping thing, which is as we go along and we talk about these things, if you have questions, feel free to put your question in the question box. We may not get to it immediately, but certainly at the end, we'll be able to have some time to answer any questions that you have. Yeah, no, I think we both. I think we'll get to this, but you and I both produce podcasts for organizations all across the United States and for speakers and coaches and authors. And there's always this challenge of, even if you're doing really, really well, how do you continue? How do you do better?
Exactly. By the way, speaking of housekeeping, Doug, should we turn off our cameras just to?
Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and do that?
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be fun. I just thought it'd be fun to for people to get a sense of us. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is fun. All right. So moving along. So. Again, we're solution focused here. We want to share with you the way to get your podcast out to more listeners, build your tribe, increase credibility, authority, visibility, all the things that we know and agree that podcasting does. And we want you to be discovered or rediscovered, which is a huge part of what we're thinking about here, by your current listeners, tribe, and fans, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
All right. So enough about us. How about us?
Exactly. But enough, right? But enough about me. What do you think about me? Just really quickly, we want to give you. I mean, I can see just the people we have live. Many of you I know quite well, but just really quickly, I thought we'd give you a rundown because we do have a diverse audience listening, and some people may be familiar with me, some people may be more familiar with David. So yeah, I'm Doug Foresta from Stand Out and Be Heard, and I started doing podcasting about 10 years ago now, and truthfully, I had really no plan for what I was going to do. I actually did start on Blog Talk Radio, and I did a show on Blog Talk for many years, and it was interesting. I remember saying that the first time I did a podcast, I was so nervous. I had a show called Break Free to Success, and when I got on there, I said, "Hello, welcome. This is Doug Foresta from Break Free from Success," which evidently is a show about people that have too much success and just want to get away from it all.
It was the opposite show.
It was riches to rags. It was a riches to rags show. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny thing about when the red light goes on, and all of us who podcast have experienced that very first few shows where your mouth gets dry and you can't drink enough water, and you feel the adrenaline and all of that.
But I mean, bottom line is just to make it quick. I produce thousands of podcasts. Again, for organizations all across the United States. Most recently, bringing on AARP as a client, and so that's really been my background originally as a therapist and a social worker, and moved into podcasting mainly because I did it first for myself because I wanted to get my message out into the world.
And what I love about working with Doug is that for the times I need therapy, I've got a built-in strategic partner that can help me with all of this. So my roots are in music production. I really started as sort of what you might call an abstract creative guy. I was a drummer in Chicago, evolved into a composer for radio, television, and film, and had what they used to call a jingle or music production company in Chicago, Dallas, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, and worked on a few. Some of these are the bigger clients, and then a lot of little ones too. A lot of not so much small business and entrepreneurial stuff in that phase, but between roughly 1986 and 1999, I built this company up, and we did a lot of fun stuff, including some documentary work, and so I've really been a content creator since I was probably about age 5. But the circle back to podcasting came after I kind of closed the door on this music part of my life and did some business endeavors and really learned about the plight of the entrepreneur, and in an empathetic way began to help them amplify their voices. And ultimately, as this market has matured with broadband and podcasting and content marketing, I found a new place on the planet as someone who helps any size business amplify, position their branding through the use of and the discovery of the power of their own voice. So that's kind of at the core. And so we have that. Doug and I have that in the Stand Out and Be Heard, and the power of your voice as being our subtext is it indicates to everybody that we really care about who we work with, and we care about the why they do it, and the why we do it, I think in common is that we want to help people amplify who they are and what their brand is all about. So
Absolutely. And I just want to add something really quickly to that, just before we move on, which is I know sometimes you hear on webinars, people do joint ventures and things like that. They go, "I'd like to introduce you to my good friend." And of course, my good friend means, my good friend means they have some type of who knows what kind of arrangement. But truthfully, I can truly say that David is someone that we met through a mutual friend. Like I said, about 9 months ago, and it was just, I mean, it was just a great match, and I do consider David a truly a good friend. And one of the things I really like about you, David, is that you have that same passion to help people get their voice and their message out in the world. That your voice matters, that it matters what you do. So I just want to say that sometimes you hear people say, "Oh, I want to introduce you to my good friend," but truly, I can say David is a good friend and a kindred soul.
well, thanks for that, Doug. No, we are kindred souls. It was kind of like one of those instant connections and like-mindedness that we both mutually felt, and it's been a really good ride so far. These 9 months or so, giving birth to new things. So anyway, and the feelings are very mutual.
Enough about our love fest, right? Let's give them. Right. I know the poor people are like, "All right, what's going on?"
All right, next. Yeah. All right. So you want to drive this, Doug? So.
Sure, absolutely. I know there's a couple of different types of people that are going to listen to this. You may already have a podcast, or maybe you've thought about having a podcast. Maybe you've been doing video or webinars before, but you have some type of audio content. And but let's take the example first and foremost of you have an existing podcast, you have audio content. Let's say you've been doing it for a couple of years. Now the question becomes, now what? And as we were saying, one of the things that we get asked quite a bit is this question about, okay, I've been doing a podcast, my numbers are, fairly stable, maybe they're growing a little bit every month, and, but I put out, I do it, I put out content, I definitely see a value from it, but there's got to be something else. Like, what else can I do with this? And I think, one of the things that David and I are always asking is this question about, how do you stay on that cutting edge, and how do you get out to more people? And of course, we hear the typical stuff like share it on social media, you send it to your email list. I mean, there's a million things that we could say that you probably have heard 1,000 times before. So we were looking for something else. I just see a lot out there if I Google like how to grow your podcast listenership, it's the same stuff over and over again, and stuff that probably, if you've worked with me, I probably have told you. Ask your guest to share it, put it on social media, share it, all the different things that probably we already know. But really what we were thinking is, there's got to be some other solutions.
Exactly, and so here we drill down to the problems a little bit. It's challenging to find the new ways we've already established, and here's something that we really started to focus on, and that is that we're cranking out stuff weekly, daily, if you're lucky, right? Monthly, bi-monthly, whatever the frequency is of your content. You're spending a lot of time and work on this, and you have, over the course and the arc of the time you've been doing this, you have some old legacy, evergreen content. The content still it doesn't have any less value just because you did it 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, but it's lost on the horizon is the way I sort of like to think about that. So that's one of the things that we felt we could fit in and begin to solve. It's a cycle of distribution and publishing, right? So you hear this term RSS, which is basically real simple syndication. It's the way podcast subscribers get delivered new content. So I came up with this, silly little idea, but it sort of zeroes in on it. Unfortunately, RSS can also mean release your content, you get a surge of traffic and interest, and then so long, bye-bye. It's kind of like out on the horizon, and it's lost forever, even though it's still really valid and has a lot of value. So we ask, so how do you extend and leverage the life and value of that evergreen legacy content that's still valid, still valuable, but kind of lost out there in time?
And let me ask you a question really quickly before we go there. Can you go back one?
Yes.
David, just go back. Let me ask you a question. So if you find a new podcast, and everyone is different, but I'm really curious, and you could put your answer in the question part if you'd like. When you find a new podcast and they have 100 and 100 something episodes or 40 episodes,
Right.
do you go back and listen to episode 1 and then listen all the way through?
No,
Or
there's a
do you
site.
listen?
Oh, right. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, but I'm curious for people that are
For the
on.
audience. Yeah.
Because-
You don't want me to answer. Yeah.
No.
I have an answer, but you knew that. Okay.
Yeah, no. I mean, I actually, what do you do, David? I don't actually know what you do.
All right. So I'll just say, since we're not muted, I'd say that. Uh, the truth is, psychologically, there is this, even though you know that the earlier content may be totally valuable, because of time and energy and stuff, you're not going to go back to number 2, number 3, number 1, number whatever, unless you're curious about a particular subject and it's turned up in search. But for the most part, you're going to look at the latest because that just feels like it has more value, only because it's the most recent occurrence.
Yeah, that's what I tend to do too. I mean, it might not be, if there's 40 episodes, I might listen to 37 or 38 or 39.
Yeah,
but
right.
Generally, I'm not going back to episode 1 ever.
Right.
Like I'm not going to go back to episode 1. It's just not going to happen.
And as podcasters, I mean, you could argue that some of the early shows sometimes have a certain life and discovery thing just because it's all new that could really make those early shows really exciting. You went out and got your most valued guest that you could ever have because you wanted to launch in a way that was like profoundly beautiful and splash it out there anyway. So
and just one last thing too to say before this, that sometimes we look at our download numbers and say, I got a new subscriber, so they downloaded all the episodes. But don't confuse, when someone subscribes to your podcast, yes, they download all the episodes, but don't confuse that with the idea that they're listening to all the episodes.
Right. I mean, I even in my world, I know that sometimes I have episodes that or series that I subscribe to, and I just may not find the time to go way back in time to listen to all of them. So you're talking about sort of in the course of life, we may or may not listen, and don't assume as a podcaster that just because they're downloaded, they're being listened to. So that's interesting. All right, are we ready?
All right.
Yeah, sorry. Drum roll, please. So one of the things that and Doug knows this, I've been really fascinated about, mainly because my roots are in traditional broadcasting, I think, and this sort of informs this, but this intersection of what is called internet radio, which is another growing but less visible side to podcasters of this way of distribution. And internet radio is a lot like it sounds. It's streaming internet radio. So what happens is you tune in and you hear something already in progress. And I've been really fascinated about the introduction or the introduction and the connecting of the dots between those of us who create on-demand content and then the concept of bringing what I'll call a broadcast kind of ideology, or this continuous play of 24/7 content in a new way to podcast creators and as a distribution mechanism. Doug, I'll toss it to you for anything more.
Yeah, and we'll explain to you what we mean and what the difference is. But it's something that it's interesting because internet radio actually has been around longer than podcasting, but the way in which we're looking at it, I think, is very different than what anyone is doing.
Exactly. All right.
And we'll discuss that.
So here we go. So internet radio, once again, it is really what it sounds like. It's taking sort of the attributes of old broadcast radio where, you flip on the dial and there's something already playing, there's a party already in progress. What did I miss? What's going on here? So you're sort of joining something in progress, which has a sort of interesting psychology in and of itself. And that's the distinction. I mean, in internet radio, there's this element of discovering surprise that's quite a nice counterpoint. And again, it's not instead of on demand, which is the difference between the two, right? And on demand, you know what you want to listen to. I'm going to listen to a specific episode. It's got a number on it, number 38. It's got this guest, and that's why I want to listen to it. But what about this whole discovery thing? And how does that mix in? And how can that be of value to podcast discoverers and those who create podcasting? So
absolutely.
Those are did I hit the differences, do you think, thoroughly there?
I think people will probably have more questions about it.
Okay.
But again, for those, please do go ahead and put your questions in the question question
chat box. Yeah.
And we want to make sure that you're clear on these concepts.
Exactly. And Doug, I just wanted to add that, simply put, internet radio is an ongoing 24/7 rotation of programming, audio programming that's always going on, and podcasting, of course, is an on-demand experience. So it's two different modalities of consumption. Here's some stats we pulled in from emarketer.com, a range of time here, but you can see the digital radio listenership continues to grow. It looks like it's leveling off as we move into 2018, but a substantial amount of listeners are involved. Some of the space, you see the reference to terrestrial radio. That terrestrial is not from another planet. Terrestrial is sort of like
it's what we know as traditional radio.
Yeah, exactly. Although knowing Doug and I, you may think, well, yeah, these guys are from another planet. But actually, it actually just means radio with an antenna. And so, in a lot of cases, you'll see like on radio websites, they say, well, this radio station, whatever, is streaming, their programming. It's just so they've gotten on the bandwagon, and they did it pretty early. So a lot of internet radio is consumed by restreaming, but the idea of podcasters starting to create their own place within the realm of internet radio is really pretty new.
Right, and the bottom line is we're missing an opportunity here for those of us that are entrepreneurs and speakers, coaches, authors. That there's an opportunity here that we haven't been tapping into, and yeah, you can look at this average time spent per week with all sources of online radio. It's really growing, and of course, podcasting is eating radio's lunch, and online radio is also eating radio's lunch. And I'm curious, if any of you listen to online radio stations. There are many of them out there, there's many different ones out there. I'm on Empower Radio. We actually have a question here.
Yeah, I saw that from Sally.
I see that. And the question, and we'll come to this, but don't people end up having to pay a bundle to be on internet radio? There are definitely stations like Voice America and some of these other places that charge people literally thousands of dollars a month to be on their internet radio stations. That certainly is true. On the other hand, it is not the case that everyone who's doing internet radio is paying a bundle to do internet radio. I mean, it, like anything else, it just depends. But I think, Sally, what you're referring to is a model like Voice America, which, quite frankly, not to beat up on Voice America, but it's not actually very innovative. They've been around for a long time. They've been around since I started podcasting, and
yeah.
The thing with a program like that is, you're lumped together with a whole bunch of people, and it is, well, you'll see what we're going to talk about. It's the way that we're talking about using internet radio is very different than the Voice America model, which I think is, to be honest with you, David, that was one of the things when you and I first started talking about this. I think it was the Voice Americas of the world that initially I was like, I don't know if this is the right way to go, because I so associated it with Voice America and some of these other places. And then when I started to realize what we could do with this and how much it could help podcasters, I realized that the Voice America model is one model. And
exactly, Doug. Yeah. No, I think it was in some ways to use a psychological term. You'll love this, reaction formation. Our idea was a reaction formation to what's been out there traditionally. It's very expensive. It means that you have to be obligated to populate new programming.
Right.
Through whatever your scheduling is.
Exactly.
It's a fat model, and part of what we wanted to do was create a model where we could leverage existing listenership, which we'll talk about in a bit,
Exactly.
rather than you having to grow a new station from scratch. And I think that's that's one of the elements there as well.
Absolutely.
We pulled down some stats. We don't want to bore you with a lot of this stuff, but it's quite interesting. This 18 to 34, which tends to be a space that is very heavily targeted. So this is a little bit of a narrative about the age groups that are consuming internet radio and streaming services. So of course there's a lot of music out there as well. So again, because we're not talking about music in most cases here. We're not DJs that are creating radio stations. We are people that are authorities, thought leaders, experts, authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs that want to get either grow our business using this as a content marketing tool, or actually disseminate the podcast as a pure play and looking for new and innovative ways to do that.
Exactly.
Should I move forward?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's go ahead. So yeah, again, okay, so this is really fascinating, and we know that this is going on everywhere on the internet. The idea that so much is happening mobile. Websites have to be mobile responsive. Anything more that you've learned there, Doug, in your travels?
Well, I would just say that, another thing is it's great to put, let's say, the podcast on our website. But one of the things in reality that I'm finding with, I mean, at this point, produce about 30 ongoing podcasts a month.
Right.
What I'm really finding is, for the most part, people aren't going to most websites, and if your website's not, mobile friendly, certainly they're not going to it. But the reality is that podcasting is a mobile phenomenon, internet radio is a mobile phenomenon. We want to, if we talk about reaching more audience, we're talking about reaching people on their phones and mobile devices. That's the future. That is the future for sure.
Absolutely.
You don't see people walking around with their desktop computers.
No, it's not practical. And the thing about radio or podcasting or anything audio is that you're not tying up multi-kinesthetic sort of consumption. I mean, you don't have to. Right. That's a fancy way of saying you don't have to look at anybody. You can be jogging, walking, doing all the things we know as podcasters that happen. This is really an extension of that, and we absolutely have planned in our model a mobile component, which will be significant to the solution.
That's right.
So,
yes, and we want to say too that this is not about the idea of stop podcasting. If you're a podcaster, well, stop podcasting and do internet radio. That's not the point. The point is they work well together, and in fact, if you don't have a podcast, you may very well have audio content that could be used on internet radio, and this is something David and I have talked about, the idea that we want to make this accessible to people who maybe they're not really ready to make a commitment to podcasting in the way that, I'm going to do a show forever, right? Because people say, when should I stop doing my podcast? I would say never.
Yeah.
But the idea of internet radio is that you actually could have, we'll kind of explain how this works, but you could have a finite amount of audio, and it would be nice it's always nice to put new content in, but you don't have to have quite the same kind of commitment that you would have with a podcast in terms of every Monday I'm going to come out with this. Because
we're leveraging archives and archived material and refreshing it and making it newly rediscoverable, and so it relaxes that obligation, I guess, is part of what you're saying there.
Let me explain. Let me step back and explain really quickly, just for people, in the simplest terms, what this looks like, versus podcasting.
Right.
Should we go on with the slides?
That may be good because it'll help visualize it. So. I'll just kind of kick this off and then toss it back to you because I know you were watching something. So this is an example of the Small Biz America radio player, or one version of the player we did while we were in development. You can see it's very, very simple. It identifies itself as, broadly speaking, a business or small business entrepreneurial radio stream, playing 24/7 internationally. In our player, we have the ability to put buttons like you see on the bottom, but the emphasis here is it's really simple, it's embeddable, and it can be placed anywhere. So this is sort of a visual on the player that people see when they're going to go listen, whether it's mobile or on a desktop. Okay, I'll toss it to you, Doug.
Excellent. So let me just explain really quickly the difference in a simple way that I can. With a podcast, it is people will generally click on one podcast at a time. If I want to listen to Leah Ruby, I'll pick on you there because I see you. If I want to listen to one of Leah's fantastic podcasts, Filling Your Soul, and I want to listen to episode number 4, I go to iTunes, I go wherever I find her podcast, and I click on episode number 4, and I listen to that specific episode. I want to hear the episode with Bill O'Hanlon. I hear the episode with Bill O'Hanlon. That is the model, right? It's and of course, that I think that's fantastic. The idea of what's nice about extending this with online radio is that it's a little bit different way of listening. There are people who just like to have they just like to have a talk radio station on in the background throughout their day.
Yeah.
So if they have, let's say, my interest is, if my interest, I mean, we'll take animals as an example. Let's say there's an internet radio station for animal lovers, and I click the player. It's one player, just like radio would be, and then there are shows on there, and whatever's on is on, and the idea is it's more randomized. It's almost like Pandora, right? It's that kind of thing where if you like this show, you'll like that show, and all the shows are selected in a way that the person that's listening to the station would generally have an interest in these. And what's nice about this, and I can tell you that this has helped me tremendously. I've definitely been I get emails from people all over the world, but I had a woman who was listening to NPR, and she was listening through one of these aggregators, through one of these internet radio aggregators that just grabs audio content. And so she finishes NPR, and all of a sudden my voice comes on. And she said, I would have never found you from a hole in the wall because I really, who's Doug Foresta? What would I care? She goes, but I started listening to the episode and I really liked it. And then I went back and I actually listened to all your podcasts too.
Absolutely. It's like this flag out there that can bring people into the podcast. So.
Right. But had she not been doing that, she would have never searched out. She would have never searched for Creating Change. She would have never searched out Doug Foresta. It wouldn't have happened. So what we're talking about here, and what David and I are in the process of building, are stations that essentially become, we'll explain a little bit more, but they're basically joint ventures. They are not the model. They're more egalitarian than the Voice America model, which is based on basically, pay us $1,000 a month and we'll put you on this network. This model is more egalitarian. It is more about supporting each other, and it is a powerful way that we have found to get new listeners from all over the world and exponentially increase your listenership. And for those of you that know me, I definitely don't hop on a ton of webinars like this unless I think there's something really good. At first, to be honest, like I said, David kind of had proposed this to me, and I thought, I don't know. And when I started to research it and when I started to experience it, I realized we can really exponentially increase the amount of listeners that we have. We have to be doing this. Like, we have to do something with this. And so.
Oh no, yeah. It's just there's a real energy at this crossover point between discovery and the cross-pollination between different hosts being rotated, and the ability to sort of join the party already in progress, which creates this intrigue. There are just a lot of elements to this that I've always found appealing. I'm so glad that Doug, sort of drank my Kool-Aid, because
Not yet. It's early.
I knew there was something here, but he really helped me further define it and understand why it's so powerful. So
Rick Sizemore, my buddy in Virginia, says, love the concept. Shout out to Rick. He has a fantastic show called VR Workforce Studio. So thanks.
I love it. Hey, Rick. Good to meet you. Yeah. So is this a good time to kind of go here?
Yeah. So let's talk about, what we're talking about today is, we don't have like this. I know a lot of you probably used to going to webinars and get this hard pitch at the end. This is really the beginning for us. What we're doing is, this is the beginning, not the end. This is the beginning of what I see as an evolution of through my, for me at least, it's an evolution of how I'm going to serve people, and in my work with David together, how we're working together. I see this as an evolution of how we can help you reach more listeners. So let's talk about today what we're doing today, and again, for people that are on live, and also if you're listening to this after the fact, share with you. Like I said, this is sort of the beginning of what we're doing to bring this out into the world and to really fully use the power of internet radio.
So you've got this a whole bunch, a big basket of content, starting from episode 1 or maybe 3 if you want to use, eliminate a few. But you curate the shows that you want to participate in this model, as a podcaster, as our partner, and essentially we would put those shows into what I'll call a randomized playlist rotation. Actually, it can be random or it can be in an order. And in some cases, it may be necessary to put them in an order. But again, those are flexibilities that are built into the model. So you have all these shows that are, sort of playing randomly so people can discover them and hear the new content mixed with the old content, or maybe just the best of the best that you want in rotation all the time. Interstitial, or, that's a fancy word for in between the shows, you'll have your own, we'll call it 60 seconds. I think there's a little play here, but 60 seconds of a promotional message, which is more of a call to action, focusing the funnel, etc., driving people to the landing page you want to drive them to, referencing the program they're listening to. So it's almost like you have your own station within the broader station that we've created.
Well, let me back up. Let me back up because I'm not sure that we've actually said this. So, first of all, one of the things the reason we're doing this today, we are, the Army used to say, we're looking for a few good people or something. I think it was sexist. I think they said we're looking for a few good men. But anyway, we're looking for podcasters and or people that have some audio content they may have had done a video series or something like that.
Yep.
And we are starting with we have an existing, we bring an existing listenership. We already have, David has a talk radio station called Small Biz America Radio. And so what we wanted to do, like I said, this is the beginning, not the end. What we wanted to do in this offer is to offer you, to invite you into a conversation, because it has to be the right fit for you. It has to be the right fit for us. This is not the kind of thing where, click here and, click here and join. It definitely has to be a conversation.
Right.
What we're inviting you to do is join David's existing network. David, I think we have how many hours of audio listenership do you bring right now?
So currently on a monthly basis rolling, we have about 750 hours a month of total listening time. Just the big number is 44,686 minutes of listening with an average session length of about 24.3 minutes. And,
so we have an existing listenership. We have an existing listenership, an existing talk radio station.
Right.
And what we're inviting you to do is to join us, and it really also becomes a joint venture as well, because the player will live not only, see, Voice America, the thing about Voice America is that Voice America is one network, Voice America. What we're looking to do is to help you leverage the station itself. We'll talk about all the different places it's distributed, but just to say, we'll get you into places that you're not getting into right now, and you'll get into them day one. And the other piece about it is that player, that streaming player, you can put that on your own website. You can put that, in fact, that's part of what we encourage you to do, because as everyone puts that out into their own following, you're also leveraging the power of all the people that are on the network. But one of the nice things is that we wanted to start with Small Biz America Radio because it is a station that has an existing following and an existing, as you said, 44,000 hours of audio content, right?
Yeah, actually that's the minutes. So it's call it rounded 45,000 minutes, but it's about 750 hours today and growing. Our 30-day trend is, it's been really, really ramping up.
And let me ask you, for those of you that are on right now, or again, if you're listening after the fact, do you ever feel like, I'm putting out this content, I know it's so good, I'd like to have some more people hear it. I'd love to. We definitely want to open this up here. So again, hop into the conversation, please. We want to hear from you. But I'm curious if you have that feeling. I know I've had that frustration as a podcaster. Like, boy, that was a really good episode. Why did I only get 100 listens to it? I know that more people would benefit from it.
Exactly, Doug. And then, and then after the initial surge, it kind of goes away, and there's no sense that people continue to listen to an episode that's over, and it doesn't mean it's less valuable. So, and that's really so much of really what we're trying to do for our partners, guys like you that are interested and feel like this is a fit. And I'll say, as a podcaster, I've been doing this since '05, right? So So I have the same feeling, and now since I've launched Small Biz America Radio, and I see these numbers, it makes me excited. It makes me,
Right.
you know, it emotionally creates a different feeling about sort of this durability of the stuff I'm doing, and the fact that, you know, it doesn't get old after it's done. So it's been a big emotional sort of shift for me.
And then,
And
you know, what that looks like in terms of the other thing, the other question that we get is, what does it look like in terms of how would my show play? There's a couple of things that we can do. You know, we can give you a regular slot so that you know your show plays, you know, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. So that if you're directing people to the network, you can tell people when your show is going to run, but at the same time, your show will also be randomized within the network, so that, you know, if people are listening at 3 in the morning, which they might be because it's international, that there's still a chance that they're going to come across your show. And like I said, you know, what I've found is it helps my podcast too, because when people discover me on the internet radio on the stream, they tend to then, if they like the content, they go back and they listen to the podcast too, which is really cool.
yeah, it can drive subscriptions on iTunes, totally, and we want to include that. So and I'm glad you sort of brought it back down to earth. You know, I'm a musician, so I can kind of run away in my mind. You know, I live a little more in my mind sometimes. I mentioned this idea of an interstitial or a 60-second promotional message. We want to include some call to action audio messaging that we'll produce amidst the rotation of your programs, and that was the concept there.
So
and yeah, we can target certain days of the week.
Promotional ad, a promotional call to action within the network.
Right, exactly. Outside of your show,
outside of your show.
Yeah, exactly, and drives more listenership to the podcast or whatever place you want them to be.
Right.
Maybe you want to drive them specifically to a landing page or you know, like that. So we also should mention that for those that care, this is an international distribution model. So, you know, we're in 82 countries, by the way. Of course, at the top of the list is the English-speaking countries, but I was amazed, and one of the things I was amazed about, and this is varying value depending on who you are, but there are, you know, we're in Britain, we're in Japan, we're in Germany, we're in France. You know, you're seeing a lot of international listenership, which is quite fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So, all right, good. So
you're showing them a little bit about the this is like what the report looks like. This is an older one, right?
Yeah, this is an older one. This is only a couple weeks old, and I don't have a date on it. Sorry, guys, but yeah, the average session length now has grown to 24 minutes, which I'm really, really happy about. And this is really currently, if you listen to the station, it only has my programming on it. There are a couple of other partners that have begun to rotate in, but you know, it's going to change structurally as we bring new folks in, and you know, we'll be sorting that out.
And
here's the I actually have this. I forgot I have the screenshot of the countries. So go ahead.
Like 77 countries. I get emails from people all over the world now. You know, saying, I listen to you, I hear you. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how we could have that kind of impact in the world.
Yeah,
and
isn't that crazy? Yeah.
And I just don't see anyone, like I said, I just don't see anyone using this model outside of the old, like, hey, we have this internet radio station and you can be on our station. I think what's different about what we're doing is the idea, like I said, we're coming from a more egalitarian place of you get the player as well. You can put the player on your website. You can put the player out on your social media, and we all benefit from the shared promotion of that network. And you know, this is really we're starting with we are going to create additional networks for specialty niches like health and wellness and other, you know, other types of niches, and that is something we'll do in the future. But we wanted to start with Small Biz America because it is an existing network that is already getting listeners, and you can see right here.
Exactly. We have that too. But I wanted to. There was something I thought of while you were speaking. Oh yeah. In contrast to this Voice America idea, and again, there are a couple of them out there. That's the only one we're seeming to think of today. But I think in that model, if I've got it right, you have your own full station, which, you know, is part of the reason it's what I call a fat model. It's more expensive. You have a higher level of obligation to show up.
Correct.
And this, you're coming in as a co-opt partner, and you mentioned this egalitarian thing. It's really it's a democratized, you know, version of that, and it spreads the economics out in a way that makes this a lot more approachable for.
Meaning this is not $1,000. Meaning it's not $1,000 a month.
Yeah, we're not going to be looking at that kind of price
It's
point.
part
It's
of
nowhere near
the
that.
for
Yeah.
those of you that are wanting. And Sally, thank you. We'll talk later. I know she said she has to run out, but we'll talk later, Sally. I
Thank you,
definitely would
Sally.
love to
All
hear from
right,
that.
great. So
So
we
yeah,
have,
so
yeah.
really quickly, right? If we will give you the, we're happy to give you some more information about it, and we'll take questions. But if you think that this is right for you, we really have to do this through conversation because obviously, since we'd be adding content to the network, and we want to make sure it's the right fit for you. We want to make sure it's the right fit for us. That very simple. Just fill out a form here below to have a conversation with David and I. It's podcastingradio.com/join-SBA. So yeah, and I think that link we could actually, let me see if I can put it into the.
Oh, that'd be great. Make it easier for people. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can put it into the chat here.
Yep. So basically, I built a page with a form on it, so that should be an easy nav for you guys. And let me just.
Actually, David, could you pop? You think you can pop that into the chat? Just
Yeah, I
copy
think I
paste
can do that.
It won't
Yeah.
let me do it from the.
Let me see if I can do it. Yeah. Oh, actually, you know what? It won't let me do it either. But if I get out of display mode, I could just grab it from the website. So let me do that real quick here, guys. Sorry.
Okay,
It's
cool.
gonna be.
Excellent.
I don't know if you guys can see my ugly screen
Yeah,
here.
it'll take a second. No.
It'll only take a minute. Yeah, I just need to go to my.
So yeah, we'd love to hear from you about what your thoughts are. I know Sally said she's interested. I mean, again, I really have been looking for. It's really been a couple of years that I've really been looking for something that excited me in terms of how to really grow your. Obviously there's a tremendous amount of benefit to doing podcasting and building a listenership and all of that, but I just haven't seen anything that's been truly innovative or truly shown to really grow your audience beyond, like I said, beyond the stuff that we've all heard about. Share it on social media, add a picture, send it to your email list, the stuff that we all know. I mean, good stuff, the basics, stuff that we should be doing. But this is something that really has the potential to exponentially increase the number of people that are listening to your content. And one of the questions too that I anticipate people will have, whether you're on live or afterwards, is what if I don't have a podcast? And there's a couple things. If you don't have a podcast, we encourage you to start a podcast, and we can help you with that too. Just want to say that, right? So if you don't have a podcast, you might want to start a podcast, and certainly we can help you with that. You may have, like if you've done a video series or you've done something that has an audio component to it, we could talk to you about whether that might be a good fit for this. But the nice part too is, yeah, we're not expecting you to, you can give us the content ahead of time and we can schedule it in. So if you already have, let's say, if you say, okay, I've got 15 episodes of audio here, we'll schedule that in and we'll rotate it. And remember that when most people are listening to this station, people listen whenever they listen, and to them it's brand new, right? That's the whole thing about the idea of discoverability. They don't know what episode 1 or episode 25, or episode 100. They're listening in the now. Whatever they're listening to is happening right now.
That's right. For them, it's new, and for them, it's a discovery. And in a world where we get tired of our own stuff, sometimes it's just a phenomenon of doing content creation.
Exactly.
There's no concern about am I current enough. It just keeps you current all the time, leveraging the power and the value of the content you've produced out the horizon, out the timeline, down the long tail, however you like to say it. By the way, just a question: did that link show up in the chat for everybody? Just want to make sure.
Take a look here. Yes, it showed up for me.
And so we want to just, get your input, get your questions, have a conversation about this as we continue to develop and evolve it. Again, the idea here is that you're growing, you're joining an existing growing station that is working, and we really look forward to engaging in that conversation.
And again, I want to say, like, if you're listening to this after the fact and you have questions, feel free to reach out to me at dougforrest@gmail.com. David, I know they can reach out to you too, right? What would be the best place?
Absolutely, the best place is smallbizamerica@gmail.com with a Z. So smallbizamerica@gmail.com. And if you fill out this form, it will go to both Doug and I, so we'll schedule a conversation or a virtual conversation or whatever that looks like.
And so Rick says, we work really hard to publish, 30-minute and a 10-minute podcast is growing, but interested in how this might open up new networks.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. He said started broadcasting on a network with 25K listeners that provides audio 24 hours a day. And he said, yeah, and Rick said the same thing. You know, we put a lot of work into this stuff, and then it goes into the library.
Yeah.
And we want to keep it alive. Like we want to keep this. You know, we want to keep it alive. We want to continue to make this something that's fresh for listeners because we do work so hard on this content. But Rick, that's awesome. I mean, it sounds like you're doing something that's great with. It sounds like that's specifically for blind or low vision non-readers, which is great. But yeah, I mean, this is another way. The other piece that we didn't really touch on very much, I just want to say, is that we also, this network will go out on a lot of distribution channels that podcasts cannot go out on. And, you know, David, maybe we could just really quickly, if you could, I think it's on radio.co, there's a list of the different distribution channels that online radio can go on. Do you think you could just find that really quickly?
Radio.co. Okay.
Yeah, it's radio.co. I think we could, if we pull up that page, we could just show people. It's I think you just
let me see. So is it .co?
Radio.co. Or you can just Google Internet Radio Directories, and
Internet.
Maybe we can just show people the different directories.
Just to get a kind of a sense of it. I actually had a document created there. So there's AccuRadio.
That's it.
Is that it?
Cool. No, that one. Yeah.
Oh.
No. Sorry. Go back. That one. Internet Radio Directory, submit, promote, radio.co.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Oh, there it is. I see it. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Just want to show people this really quickly.
Yeah. No, this is good. All right.
So just to give you an idea of, these are
here we go. Tune in, iTunes Radio. By the way, a lot of people don't know that iTunes has, there's the podcast tab, there's the find music tab, and then there's this radio tab where you find it. There's a lot of stations in there, but most of them are music, some of them are talk, and we're there. So Windows Media. There's radio.co itself. Oops. Streaming the net, Delicast, Radio Tower, Screamer Radio, radio.com. So you can see.
These are all distribution channels that can only take online radio. So you can't get your podcast onto these stations unless they're in an internet radio form, unless they're in a streaming audio form.
Exactly. It's a specific form. It's not an RSS like you do with podcasting. So it's a separate parallel kind of channel. Yep.
Right. So the bottom line is, day one, you get onto 15 more distribution channels that you weren't in before. You become part of an existing network, and you exponentially, you have the potential to really exponentially grow your audience and have your, again, there's nothing more frustrating than when you're spending a lot of time creating content and feeling like, man, I know that there's more of an audience for this. At the same time, there's nothing more rewarding than when you get an email back from somebody in the Middle East or Europe or Central America, and they say, "Boy, I found you," and that is happening to me literally every day now. So
that's cool.
I think that, David, do you have anything else? I mean, I just want to say one more thing that I'm sure again, people listening live or afterwards, I will just say, obviously we'll talk to you about the cost of the network. I mean, we do want to make it clear, obviously. We're doing work on our end to create this, so this is what we do. But I can tell you that it is a fraction of what you would pay even to have your podcast produced by us. Right, David?
Yes, that's true. Absolutely.
Right.
No, this is. I think what we're looking at here is a very approachable kind of economic model. Mostly by virtue of the structure of things. We're structuring a channel with several different hosts so that it works for us and it works for you guys, rather than having this big fat model that's $2,200 a month, and it just doesn't work for a lot of small businesses.
We work to make this affordable, even to the the individual author speaker who is who's running a business and has all of the challenges that we understand. So yeah, I mean, that's really it. If there's no other questions, we just encourage you, like I said, to fill out that form, have a conversation with us, and we'll see if it's a good fit. I mean, on both sides, we can see if it's a good fit on both sides. But I tell you, I have not been this excited in a while about a new technology, probably as since I discovered podcasting, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, he's been saying that along the way, and it's so exciting to hear. And so yeah, so we look forward to hearing from you guys. Join the conversation, and let's talk about how we can work together on this model with Internet Radio. So thanks, Doug. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, be well.